What's up, everybody? This is Trey Biddy with HawgSports.com, HawgSports.com. Got a lot to talk about on today's show. Didn't do a show last week. A lot of stuff was happening, but we're going to wrap up June recruiting with Danny West. So much stuff going on, and of course, there's some commitments on the horizon, some possible decisions for Arkansas. We're going to talk to Danny about that. We're going to look at the Arkansas's roster. We're not far off from SEC Media Day starting from the start of fall camp. We're going to discuss all that and get your questions as well on today's episode of Hog Sports Live. Before we get started, I want to remind you there's plenty of ways to watch and listen. You can always tune in on Facebook Live. Now, if you haven't followed the page already, become one of almost 90,000 Razorback fans to do so. Throw us a like, thumbs up. Also available on YouTube. We'll upload that immediately on YouTube after this. Throw us a like there. Subscribe to the channel if you haven't done so already. And also available on Apple Podcasts. Leave us a 5-star review on Apple Podcasts if you haven't done so. We did not have a single review. We had ratings, but we didn't have a single review. Nobody wrote anything. The last one was a novel. I really appreciate that. But we didn't have a single review in the month of June. We didn't have a lot of shows in June either. So, but I appreciate that. And also available anywhere you find your favorite podcasts, Apple Podcasts, of course, Spotify, Google Podcasts. I guess Stitcher's gone now, so no more Stitcher. All right. Appreciate you listening. Also, Hog Sports courses, 30% off and just $1 right now for your first month at HawgSports.com. Where to begin? Let's begin with Ryan Mallett. So we didn't do the show last week. It's been, I guess, 5 days since Ryan Mallett passed, and just a tragic deal. And it's one of those things that you just didn't want to believe when you heard about it. I can remember meeting Ryan when, I want to say he was like 15, maybe 16. It was about 19, 20 years ago at an Arkansas camp. And I'd already knew about him before he got there, obviously, because he was going to be the next big thing. I remember he didn't want to tell me his 40 time when I asked him about that. Ryan was always very accommodating to me. I always enjoyed talking to him. I didn't have like a personal relationship with him, but just, kind of a professional relationship. We always had good conversations, and, my heart goes out to his family and friends, the kids he coached, his students, all of that, and all the people that were close to him. Just a really sad deal. Ryan was, I think, probably the best quarterback that ever played at Arkansas. They won 10 games. I'll never forget some of the throws that he made. I always talk about this one because it was a practice. Let me get this off here. It was a practice, and I just remember, like everybody talks about the throws that Ryan Mallett made, what sticks out, and there's, the Kobe Hamilton before LSU at halftime. There's the Joe Adams again against LSU. There's the wheel route to Ronnie Wingo against Alabama. There's a lot of great throws. I can remember several times him just powering opponents, or powering the team down the field. But for some reason, this throw in practice, Petrino used to open up, all the spring practices, and in fall camp, he'd open up a lot of them, and including the scrimmages. And I just remember, I think it was the first scrimmage, and he just uncorked this ball, and I was in the press box, and I remember the ball, it felt like it was just like eye level. He threw it so high, like nobody can throw a ball as high as he did. And I don't know if he would do that in a game or not, but I just remember Jarius Wright catching the ball in stride perfectly right at the goal line, and it must have been 60, 70 yards downfield, but it wasn't so much the distance, it was the height of the ball. Just an absolute cannon of an arm. Tough deal with Ryan Mallett, and there's no good way to transition from that, but we got to transition because we're going to talk about sports and stuff. But I've been thinking about the guy a lot and his family, and I know all of you have too. Switching over to summer workouts. So Arkansas is in week 6 right now of summer workouts. We posted some stuff on the site just about, bench press max and stuff. I'll say right now the highest bench press max that I've heard is 450 for Torian Carter. Bo Limmer right behind him at 445. I'm not going to go over everything. You can read this at HawgSports.com. Again, some of the things that you get with a VIP membership, just $1 for your first month again. The highest squat was 645 by Jashad Stewart. That's impressive. That's an impressive squat number. The guy that stands out to me is Andrew Armstrong, because, Andrew Armstrong did some good things. Not Andrew Armstrong, but Isaac TeSlaa. So Isaac TeSlaa, bench press 315. That's a good number for a skill guy. It's not like extraordinary, but it's a good number. His squat was 455, which is pretty dang solid for a skill guy. His broad jump was 10.5, which ties Andrew Armstrong for the longest broad jump. His vertical leap was 38 inches, which is the second highest vertical leap that I've got. So Isaac TeSlaa, 6'4", 215, a guy that a lot of people are excited about, testing out pretty darn good in the summer. Now, they're in week 6, so they've got week 7, and then they wrap up week 8. So what's 2 weeks away from now? SEC Media Day starting July 17th. Georgia goes first. Georgia goes first. I don't know why I said that. LSU, Missouri, Texas A&M go first on 17th. And then the 18th, it's Auburn, Georgia, Mississippi State, and Vanderbilt on the 18th. And the 19th is Arkansas with Alabama. So it's going to be a big crowd. Florida, Kentucky. Now, not as big a crowd as it would be if it were in Birmingham like it usually is. Last year, I believe it was in Atlanta. But this year, it's going to be in Nashville. So I'm actually going the whole time, 17th, 18th, 19th, 20th. 24/7 Sports headquarters is in Nashville, and they just moved into new offices, I guess maybe a year ago, maybe not quite a year ago, but I haven't seen them. New studios, all this kind of stuff. So I'm going to go tour all that, meet up with some of the people that I haven't seen for a long time at 24/7 Sports. So I'll probably, do that maybe the 17th or the 18th, one of the days before Arkansas goes, and then we'll blow out coverage, of course, on the 19th. It wraps up on Thursday, July 20th with Ole Miss, South Carolina, and Tennessee. So I'm going to go for the whole thing this year. Last year, my flight got canceled. There was all kinds of flight issues last year, and they just canceled my flight, just straight, and then tried to book me the next day on some ridiculous rerouting all over the place to get there. Speaking of that, schedules for 2023, ranking the schedules. Georgia Bulldogs with the easiest schedule in the SEC, according to 24/7 Sports, 14th. I would agree with that. UT Martin, Ball State, South Carolina, UAB, Kentucky, Missouri, Ole Miss, Auburn, Vanderbilt, Tennessee, Georgia Tech. Auburn, Vanderbilt, Tennessee, Georgia Tech are the away games, and then a neutral site game against Florida. It's not a very tough schedule. Arkansas is 10th out of 14 teams. When have you seen that? When has Arkansas been regarded as having the 10th easiest schedule? Now, 10th hardest, excuse me. The 10th hardest schedule. Home games against Western Carolina, Kent State, BYU, Mississippi State, Auburn, and Florida. That's not accurate. This isn't accurate. Oh, Florida International. I was about to say they're not playing Florida at home. Florida, because they ship up Arkansas to Florida every time. Florida International, it broke off to the next line. And then Missouri. And then away games, LSU, Ole Miss, Alabama, and Florida Gators. Neutral game, Texas A&M. I've said before the thing that is tricky is that stretch during the middle of the season, well, right to start SEC play, where you go at LSU, Alabama, Texas A&M and Arlington, or is it LSU, Texas A&M and Arlington, Alabama, and then who do you wrap that up with? Is it Ole Miss? I think so. And then I think you get Mississippi State, and then it's a bye week, then you're at Florida. So that's a tough stretch right in the middle of the season. Open up SEC play with 4 games on the road. I'm not going to rehash all that because I know we've talked about it several times and just how crazy it is. What do you think? What do you think Arkansas is going to do in this season? Do you think they're going to win 6 games, 7, 8? You can go to the Bet Saracen app, which is basically how to gamble in Arkansas. You can't use national, services and stuff. You have to use an Arkansas-based company, which is Bet Saracen. But Bet Saracen right now has Arkansas. You can bet 2 ways. You can go 6.5 over/under for wins regular season. If you bet the over 6.5, which I like this bet. It's -120. If you go under, it's +100. You can also bet on 7.5 wins. So I don't think it's unreasonable to expect Arkansas to win 8 games this year either. But if you bet the over 7.5 on the Bet Saracen app, it's +130, and the under is -160. I don't hate the over +7.5. I love the over 6.5. Obviously, the 7.5 pays more money, but I love that 6.5. So. And again, that's on the Bet Saracen app. I'm not sure what other people have it, but that's Bet Saracen. And that's basically all you need to know. If you're in Arkansas anyway. Speaking of schedules, just switching over to basketball real quick. Arkansas and Duke, SEC ACC Challenge. That's November 29th at 8:15 p.m. Central Time. A late game on a Wednesday against the Duke Blue Devils. What a great matchup. That'll be a lot of fun. I mean, we're going to talk about, like, is this going to be the wildest atmosphere ever? I mean, you think about some games against Kentucky and some Auburn games, over the years as being maybe the greatest environment ever in Bud Walton Arena. This is going to be up there to match it. That was really cool to see that announcement. That was back on June 28th when that was announced. When that was announced. You can tell I hadn't done the show in a little bit. We'll pick it up again when football season starts. When we start getting rolling again, we do the show 2 times a week. We've been doing it about every week. A couple times we've skipped a week here and there, just depending on what's going on. But you got to kind of take it a little bit lighter in the summer. For a guy like Danny West, he's full go, wide open, because recruiting has shifted so much to the summer months, June especially, that Danny is, full go. For me, I know that I have to take it a little easier in the summer. I used to, when I was younger, I would just go straight through it. And then there was a couple of years where I was like, why am I completely wiped out and it's September? You got to manage your time a little bit, because when August gets here, it's 24 practices over 29 days. Or is it 25? I think it's 24 practices over 29 days. August, like, the thing that is tough covering football, and I love it. I mean, I don't mean to say it's tough. It's not hard work, but as Danny says, we work hard at it. The thing that's tough about it is you open up with such a bang if you're a media person like me, because August is such a grind, and then you jump into the season. It would be nicer if it was like August was, just kind of a little more chill, and then you start the season. But you have to kind of manage things, because you want to make sure you get through August, come out the other end feeling good, and not be burnt out in September, which is easy to do. Arkansas June enrollees receive their jersey numbers. This is another article you can find on HawgSports. I'm not going to go over all of it because you can read it on HawgSports, but everybody's enrolled who should be enrolled. Let's see if I can find some notable ones here for you. Jaheim Thomas is going to wear 28, the transfer from Cincinnati. A.J. Brathwaite. It's also got heights and weights for these guys. Will be wearing number 29. Varquise Gums is number 30. Keevy Rose is going to be number 42. Francis Sherman, number 44. Amari Wiggins, Coffeyville offensive lineman, will be wearing 56. It's from the high school ranks. Alex Sanford will be in 20. Isaiah Augustave is going to be 23. Again, you can read all these on HawgSports. No sense in me going all the way down them. But it's always fun when the new names pop up on the roster. Walk-ons. How many walk-ons do you think Arkansas has? There are 85 players on the roster that are on scholarship. The remaining 42 are walk-ons. There's 42 walk-ons listed on this roster. And there's like 7 of them that were there in the spring that aren't on the roster anymore. You see that a lot in the spring. You had some guys for a semester. Some of them stick around. A lot of them don't. They just kind of go through the spring, help you get through practices and stuff. 33.1% of Arkansas's roster is made up of walk-ons. If you ask most avid Razorback fans can tell you they're familiar or know a lot about all the scholarship players, all 85. If I brought up somebody, they would say, oh, yeah, that's the guy that it would be hard for most diehard Razorback fans to tell you a third of the walk-ons, and there are 42 of them. And the program would not be able to operate without these walk-ons. They have a very important contribution. Some of them go on to be placed on scholarship. Nathan Bax is a good example. There won't be any of these guys going on scholarship this year because Arkansas is at the max, 85. So nobody's going on scholarship out of the walk-on crew. I'll tell you something else. They don't get the good numbers. The highly coveted numbers. If you look at 1 through 19, those are all pretty highly covered, and there's not a single walk-on with 1 through 19 except for Riker Acebo. And the reason he's a quarterback, so quarterbacks traditionally wear I guess 0 is not traditional, but 0 through 19 traditionally. Not always. You see some guys, Heath Schuler, I can remember at Tennessee wore 20 or 21. I can't remember, but that's kind of an odd deal. And number 12, every single number 1 through I think 19, 1 through 19, I think has a duplicate. Obviously 12 isn't being worn because of Clyde smack over Scott. That number is retired. 19 of the 29 players who wear number 30 through 49 are walk-ons, 65.5%. So obviously these numbers, aren't very coveted, 30 through 49, in terms of skill position numbers. If you're 50 through 79, those aren't. You can't play a skill, like you can't receive the ball. You're not a running back or a wide receiver, or tight end or quarterback. But and then 80 through 99, you can catch the ball. A lot of people don't know about the 90s. A 90 is an eligible number. Chris Harris is switched. So I was actually wrong on that. It's 0 through 14. So the 28 players wearing 0 through 14, none of them are walk-ons. Chris Harris just took number 15, which was previously worn by Landon Rogers, also worn by Ryan Mallett. And it'll be interesting to see what kind of deal they do to honor Ryan Mallett through the season. Maybe it's a patch or a sticker or something like that, but something to recognize him, obviously. But you got 2 players, and I've heard a lot of people talk about retiring 15. It's just hard to retire a number, and the only number I guess is retired is Clyde Scott. Nobody's wearing Brandon Burlsworth's number since his accident, obviously. But the only number that's officially retired, I guess, is Clyde Scott. But there are, again, 127 players listed on this roster right now, 105 of which will be in fall camp. So there'll be, which of the 42, 20 of the 42 walk-ons are getting invited to fall camp. But you have, almost most every number has a duplicate. And I think it's like 80-something players where 0 through 50, I guess, and then only like 40-something wear the rest of them. So you have to have – it's hard to retire a number. You can retire a jersey or something like that, but, 5 isn't retired. 5's a very popular number. A lot of recruits come in and I want to wear 5, and you can't just say, well, we retired 5. You can't wear it. So that's why you don't retire numbers in football especially. Basketball, maybe it makes some more sense because there are, a lot of numbers. There's new eligible numbers this year for basketball, but for basketball there's a lot of numbers and there's not a lot of players. But football, you're talking about, again, 127 players. You have duplicate numbers because of that. Anyway, I've got it all broken down on what everybody's wearing in terms of the walk-ons and just the list, the guys that aren't with the team anymore. The number changes that have occurred since then. A lot of them, just take incoming recruits, just take a walk-on's number. So, hey, we need you to change your number. That's just kind of the life of being a walk-on. It's not a thankless job at all. It's just not a job that gets a lot of notoriety. But these guys are an important part of the team. There's no question that they are important. And a lot of guys, I mentioned Brandon Burlsworth earlier, have gone on to do great things. Grant Morgan would be another one who won the Burlsworth Award his last year. I got the complete list of walk-ons, their heights and weights and all that stuff. I encourage you to go check it out. These guys don't get a whole lot of notoriety, and I enjoyed, learning a little bit more about those guys because I sometimes look at it and, who's this guy? And when I do a story like this and I'm kind of forced to remember the numbers, I like to know everybody's number a couple of weeks into fall camp at least, like by heart. Stuff like that helps me. Okay, Danny West time. Feels like Danny West time. For those of you who don't follow Danny West, he is the HawgSports recruiting analyst. Been with us a long time, does a great job. You can follow him at Danny West 24/7 on Twitter. Not only is Danny great at his job, he's a very good friend of mine. Danny, how you doing, man? I thought I had him. It was a long extra ring. He's usually a 1-ring pickup.
Your call has been forwarded to an automatic.
That's never happened before. We're going to try him again. Danny, how you doing?
Doing great, man. How are you?
I'm doing good. So, I was just talking about some of the things that are on the schedule. We're 2 weeks away from SEC Media Days. We are, Danny, we are 32 days from the start of fall camp. They haven't announced the date, but I'm guessing, based on last year, it's going to be August 4th, which is a Friday. And last year, I think it was August 5th, which is a Friday. So we're not far from all that stuff, but I kind of wanted to recap a little bit of June recruiting month, which was, I know, wild for you, and then talk a little bit about some upcoming dates in July. But what was your overall impressions of the month of June and how it played out for Arkansas recruiting?
I thought it was a pretty good month. A lot of ups and downs. Of course, the biggest headline is a negative one with Dion and everything that went on there. But picked up 4 commitments for 2024, I should say, 4 for 24, and then 1 for 2023, the late addition there with Desmond James, the wide receiver out of Carolina. So overall, a pretty good month, but it's kind of gearing up for what could be a really, really crucial run for this year's class. Got several guys starting tomorrow, Trey. It's going to be a busy July 4th. That's what we have come to expect over the last few years. Got a couple of big-time candidates making announcements tomorrow, and then over the next few weeks, you've got several more. So a lot still left on the table for Arkansas. Missed out on a big one last week to close out the week with Shaq McCroy. Obviously, that one stings you now. You put in a lot of work for that. And
losing to Oregon.
Lost him to Oregon, which, I'm not – if I'm Arkansas, there's no way I would stop recruiting Jaquan at this point. I think anybody that can go get on 24/7 can tell you Oregon has a lot of decommitments. And I often wonder, is it just too far for most people in America? You go out there, you fall in love with it. Sure, they've got just about everybody beat in terms of stuff, but man, that's a really long way when it comes down to signing papers and heading out there. So my point being, if you lose a McCroy to Oregon or Chris Johnson chooses Oregon tomorrow instead of Arkansas, man, a lot of those guys, you got to kind of keep staying on them because you just never know. But it does seem to be a lot of crossover with Oregon and Arkansas right now, and I think that's a good thing because Oregon's right up there in the top 10 right now. So
Arkansas got Miles Slusher not long ago from after he was committed to Oregon also. Danny, you mentioned Chris Johnson Jr., 6'1", 180-pound cornerback out of Aledo, Texas. He's the number 44 cornerback prospect in the country, 40 on 24/7 Sports, 83 overall in Texas, 482 national. Solid recruit, just a little bit behind 24/7 Sports composite 4-star status. Arizona State, Arkansas, and Oregon again, as we just mentioned. Those are the 3 teams that he visited in June. How do you think things are going to play out here?
Yeah, just heard from Chris a minute ago. He told me it'd be a 7 p.m. announcement tomorrow. So, I've kind of been leaning Arkansas on this one. I think there's a lot, just on the surface, there's a lot of reasons to like Arkansas here. Of course, Jaden Allen being, of course, committed to Arkansas out of Aledo, Texas. Both those guys have talked a lot about being able to play together and what that would mean in college. So you look at that, you look at the distance factor. I mean, he's about 5.5 hours from Fayetteville. And man, you start looking up places like ASU would be a 14-hour drive, so probably a flight for your family. Then, of course, Eugene, Oregon, dang sure going to be a flight. I looked it up just for fun. I think it was a 31-hour drive from Aledo. So, the distance, having a teammate, been up here a few times, a couple of unofficials, came back with Jaden for the official 2 weeks ago. And I think there's a lot to like about Arkansas's chances. However, that's a really deep defensive back class already, and who knows how that might affect him, So I do know Arizona State's been up there for him for a long time, well before Arkansas. So they've got that going for them. And, of course, with Oregon, man, they're just they're red hot with Coach Dan Lanning right now.
Mm-hmm.
Obviously, we just talked about McCroy, but he's just one of several big-time guys committed to Oregon. So taking a long way about it here, but I would lean Arkansas, but we'll see what the next 24 hours or so has in store.
Now, a little bit earlier in the day, Ashton Bethel Roman, 24/7 Sports has him the number 92 ranked prospect in the country, number 18 wide receiver, number 16 overall in Texas, out of Missouri City, Texas, 6'1", 170, 165, 170. He visited Arkansas on June 23rd. He visited Oregon on June 20th and visited Texas Tech on June 16th. On 24/7 Sports, he's listed at warm to Arkansas and Texas Tech, and obviously the Oregon visit in there also. So where do you think things play out here with Ashton Bethel Roman?
So far, I'm liking Arkansas. Actually put in a pick, the crystal ball pick a few days ago, and according to the composite anyway, he would be Arkansas' second highest rated commitment if they're so fortunate to get him. I think he would only be behind Charlie Collins, the defensive lineman. It's kind of weird because Charlie is the highest rated by the composite, but of course Courtney Crutchfield is number one by 24/7 Sports, so gets a little bit mixed up there, but he would be a top three regardless. So big time player there. I think it's important to remember Kenny Guyton, probably one of the most overlooked recruiters that, and that's probably my fault. I should talk more about him, but he's had 5 4-stars at wide receiver over the last 3 classes, counting this one. Man, that's pretty impressive. If you had that on O-line, D-line, we'd be going crazy about it, right? So, I think Kenny Guyton deserves a lot of credit. Got him up for a visit, a couple weeks ago. Some of these dates run together, but I think they're in a really good spot, kind of out of nowhere. Like I talked about with Chris Johnson Jr., he had so much history with Arizona State, and it's kind of similar with Ashton and Texas Tech. I think they got on him super early, but lo and behold, here's Arkansas right here at the end trying to make a strong move, and that would certainly be a big one. So both of those guys, if you're able to go 2 for 2 tomorrow, man, shoot all the fireworks you can get. Those are 2 really, really good players there.
Danny West, go for it, Danny.
Yeah, sorry to cut you off, but we talked about some of these other guys coming up. There's a few that I'm watching that don't even have commitment dates yet. They haven't announced anything yet, but, you talk about a guy like Selman Bridges, big-time top 50 player in the country, cornerback out of Ridge Point High School down in Missouri City, Texas. Then you got D'Angelo Barber, big-time linebacker at same high school as McCroy, Clay Chalkville High School in Pinson, Alabama. Then Wyatt Simmons, big-time linebacker right here in the state, kind of the mystery man. He hasn't, I'll just tell you, he doesn't want to do interviews, so it's been really tough to get much intel out of that camp, and rightfully so. That's their call to make. His dad's a head coach at Harding, and they've seen the lights. They know their way around this recruitment stuff, so more power to them on that. I'm not complaining about it. I'm just saying it has made it a little difficult to try to keep up with. So he's a guy that I think could pop at any time, wouldn't shock anybody. And I think Arkansas is in the mix for all 3 of those guys. Ashton Hampton, another Ashton there, big safety out of Florida, made an official at Arkansas and several other places in June, and he could be a guy that could make a decision at any time.
Danny, you mentioned Selman Bridges a little bit, and I just wanted to take you to him real quick. He's as you mentioned, number 50 ranked prospect in the country, number 11 in Texas, 6 cornerback, 6'3". You said he might even be 6'4", 170.
Yeah.
He's got Arkansas, TCU, Texas, USC, all listed as warm. He visited Texas, TCU, and Arkansas. And it seemed like a lot of people think that if you're in Arkansas, like we talked about him on the last show, you're like, hey, even if you don't get him, keep recruiting him, because finishing second's not that bad anymore. But after his visit to Texas, like the Texas experts and recruiting analysts and stuff, they feel like Arkansas is in pretty good shape here. What are your thoughts now?
Yeah, coming out of his visit at Arkansas, I felt like he said the right things, and nothing really stood out to me. And, of course, I started talking to people on Arkansas side, and they felt really, really good about it. And I'm sitting here going, yeah, but he's about 70 miles from Austin, it's just tough to overlook, top 50 type player like that. Good luck, And we kind of saw that a few years ago with Keytron who of course is in and out of Arkansas. Now he's gone, but they were able to sneak in a couple of guys like that. Catalan was relatively close to campus, I guess. Devois Whaley was in that neck of the woods. So I'm not saying it's impossible, but just on the surface, I was thinking, yeah, you might be in good shape, but Texas is going to be tough to beat. A lot of momentum right now in their own right. So now suddenly it looks like Arkansas is probably the team to beat. If you had to say that, I guess, but yeah, I think they're right there neck and neck, and it wouldn't be a shock at all if Arkansas gets this guy. They felt really, really good coming out of the visit, and shockingly, a little bit shocking to me, I would say. I thought it would go well, but dang, man, didn't expect them to go in and wrap one up like that, and it looks like they could be on the verge of doing that.
Darren Wilson, Marcus Woodson, those D-back coaches are doing some work. So you got Fletcher Westphal, who's like 6'9", 330? I don't know, huge. He's deciding on July 10th. He's a 4-star offensive lineman, Clemson, Arkansas, Georgia, Florida, Auburn. Alex Foster, a defensive line, Arkansas looks like maybe in good shape there. Also on July 10th, Baylor, Arkansas, Georgia Tech. Brian Huff, 4-star linebacker out of Jonesboro. He's Valley View, right? Missouri, yep. Arkansas, UCF, UNLV. Braylon Russell, 4-star running back out of he's at Benton. Arkansas, Tennessee, South Carolina, Texas A&M, and Baylor. And then Kendall Jackson, Florida, Miami, Arkansas, Kentucky. Braylon Russell's the 14th, and Kendall Jackson's the 20th. Those are the ones that we know a specific date for, and as you mentioned, there are several others that are potentially deciding this month as well. So it's kind of like setting them up in June and then knocking them down in July.
That's kind of the way it's been going, ain't it? I mean, especially with Pittman's staff, I think there's so much, and we talk about it every year at this time, but there is a lot of value in getting everything or as much of it as you can out of the way before you get into fall camp. I think Pittman has always felt strongly about that. And, speaking of decommitments, knock on wood, Arkansas really hasn't had a whole lot of decommitments, especially with the early commitments that they've gotten over the last few years. Most of them tend to stick, and I think that says a lot about how thorough they are in the process. And I think there's a few guys they didn't take a commitment and made guys wait a little bit just to make sure, so they're not afraid of that. But about this time of year, yeah, you want to know a pretty good idea of at least 3/4 of your class, right? Whether that's 20 in the end or 25 makes no difference. You want to have about anywhere between half and 3/4 full, I would say. So, it takes so much load off of you when that transfer portal comes about. And, if you have to have some coaching changes after the end of the season, and we've seen what kind of heavy plate that makes for you. So, yeah, there's a lot of value in it. Pittman seems to like that. And I did a study last year. It seemed like 49% of their commitments so far under Pittman have fallen in June and July. And I think that's by design, as we used to say.
All right, Danny.
I know you love that.
By design. Chad Morris quote right there.
Try and get back.
It's by design. Okay, Danny. Anything else to add before we cut you loose?
It seems like a lot, but no, it should be a busy and fun next few weeks. They're not going to get all those guys we just talked about. They're just not, but they're going to get some good ones, I think.
Yep. All right, Danny. Appreciate you, brother.
All right, buddy.
All right, everybody. That's Danny West. Again, follow Danny at Danny West 24/7 on Twitter. He is the HawgSports recruiting analyst and does a great job. If you want to read more of his content, you need a VIP subscription to HawgSports. It's just $1 right now for your first month at HAWGsports.com. 24/7 Sports just recently came out with a list of 5 quarterbacks who could break into the top 24/7. Now, Arkansas has a commitment, obviously, in KJ Jackson out of Montgomery, Alabama, St. James. KJ Jackson, the lefty, is 6'3", 215. He's rated as the number 19 quarterback prospect in the country on 24/7 Sports. He's a 4-star recruit, number 18 in Alabama. The 24/7 Sports composite has him a little higher. He's still a 4-star on the composite. For those who don't understand the composite, okay, so the composite is taking all the top recruiting services, 24/7 Sports, On3, ESPN, Rivals, taking all of those services and combining the ranking into, basically an average. any scientist out there listening knows that you want to have the largest sample size possible, and so that's where there's value in that. I personally think by a large stretch that our analysts at 24/7 Sports do the best job, and that's where you get the 24/7 Sports individual site ranking, which again has KJ Jackson as number 19 quarterback, whereas the composite has him 29. Okay, so he's 416 nationally on the composite. On 24/7 Sports, just to give you an idea, because once you're outside the 24/7, they don't do like a national ranking, but just to give you an idea, Will Hammond, again, KJ Jackson, number 19 on 24/7 Sports. Will Hammond is number 16 on 24/7 Sports, and he is number 240 nationally. So KJ Jackson would have to move up 3 spots, basically. Not exactly, but just looking at this, kind of roughly 3 spots would probably get him in the top 24/7. He's listed as one of 5 quarterbacks who could jump into the top 24/7, which is 24/7 Sports' premier national ranking list. Anyway, pretty cool. Okay, where do we want to go next? If you haven't asked a question, go ahead and ask a question, because we'll go there as well. Speaking of quarterback rankings, KJ Jefferson is one of the top 10 quarterbacks returning in 2023 by quarterback rating. He has the second highest passer rating in Arkansas history, the second and third. A lot of people compare him to Cam Newton, but he is number 10 right now in QBR. Now, QBR is different than pass efficiency. His QBR is 77.9. Pass efficiency rating was like 165. So it's just 2 different types of formulas that they use. Okay. Questions. See what we got here. Tyler Eagle says, when does fall camp start? We talked about that. Unofficially, August 4th. They haven't said that yet, but it'll be about August 4th. Garrett Isbell says, could we go 3-1 in that 4-game away stretch, and if so, what's our ceiling as a record? If they go 3-1 during that stretch, they'll win 10 games. I think they have a real good shot at finishing out extremely strong. But if they go 3-1 in that stretch, that means, first of all, they're a really good team, because you're going to have to be a really good team to go on the road and win that many games. They're a 10-win regular season team if they would do that. I mean, to me, I'm just thinking they come out there 50-50. That's pretty strong. Donnell Williams says, what's the one recruit we can't afford to miss out of the guys we're still recruiting? It's hard to say, because the transfer portal now, you can go out and get such help. So it's kind of like always just like a huge boost. Who's the one recruit you can't miss? Let's see. Let's look at that group. It's a good question. I'm going to say, man, it's hard to say anybody you just can't miss on, you know. I mean, you hate to lose in-state guys. You got Wyatt Simmons and Braylon Russell. You kind of the last to watch. So you hate to lose in-state guys, so you know you kind of say those. But man, Fletcher Westphal, after losing Shaq McCroy to Oregon, Fletcher Westphal feels very important. Now, the problem with Fletcher is he's in Virginia. So for him to come all the way to Arkansas is going to take a bit of a leap. You know, he's obviously visited here. He visited on July 23rd. He's deciding on June 23rd. He's deciding on July 10th. But Clemson is the team right there, to me, that concerns you the most. Georgia, Florida also. I mean, those are the other schools he visited. 6'9", 335. Number 247 ranked player in the country, 20 offensive tackle, 6 in Virginia, according to 24/7 Sports. I hate to say anybody, but and they just got 2 offensive line commits. We didn't even talk about Kobe Brennan or Zuri Madison. So they got 2 offensive line commits, but I don't know. I kind of feel like maybe I would say Fletcher Westphal in response to that question. I don't know if I would say anybody's 100%, but maybe I'll say him. Donna Williams says if we hit on the 4 stars, LB would be the best LB recruiting class ever for us. Maybe. I mean, Wyatt Simmons is the linebacker too. I think he's eventually going to be a 4-star. Let's see. Let's look at the class real quick. So Julius Pope, who's a 4-star linebacker out of South Panola, Batesville, Mississippi. Well, they've just got the one linebacker commit right now. So if you get Huff, you get Wyatt Simmons, I mean, it's going to be up there, yeah. I would say that's probably fair to say because I think Simmons will be a 4-star. Huff is a 4-star. Pope is a 4-star. I think that's a fair statement based on Arkansas's linebacker recruiting over the years. Fair statement. 20 years? 20 years is a long time. But damn, it's possible, man. I mean, I'm thinking back. Like, I've been doing this for 20 years. Very possible. Jason Crow says, I can't make any predictions until I'm able to see the new offense and development of KJ as well as the new defense. A lot to be excited about, but need to see how both sides of the ball perform in prime time. But the bet is on futures. You're making a bet. You're predicting. You don't get to see the season and then go back and do it. Donnell says, KJ should shine under Dan E. I went back and watched his offense at Central Michigan. I mean, his offense has changed a lot since Central Michigan. You go back and watch his offense under Maryland. Bill Richards says, good afternoon, Trey. Happy Independence Day. Yep, coming up. There's a lot of people celebrating today, obviously. We've got some stuff later this afternoon. Early evening, I guess. We're going to go start celebrating July 4th, watch some fireworks, and then move on to July 4th and celebrate that day as well. Celebrate our freedom. Isaac Riley says, always appreciate the content you and Danny publish. Can't wait to hear from Curtis again, too. Yep. We'll have Curtis on again. Hey, Trey, who would you like to see be the next coach at Arkansas once Pittman retires? I mean, this could be a long time off. Nick Saban's 70 or 71. You know, Sam Pittman's just 61. It's not that old anymore. Hell, the president's 80. I'm not getting into that. But I don't think 61 is time to start marching him on. But there's a lot of guys out there that you could say maybe are potential people to keep your eyes on, people who have Arkansas ties. Destin Hooper says, what's your thoughts on D-line getting pressure this year and making havoc? You know, I think I've mentioned this before. I think the D-line is a solid 3 deep. I think they got a 3 deep of solid players. But I thought Josh Pate on the late kick brought up a really interesting point. Yeah, 3 deep. Is there a difference maker? Is there a guy who can just wreck things for you? I think Landon Jackson has a possibility to be that guy, as they talked about him being about 3/4 speed last year. Looked really good in the spring. How much of that is, you know, are we concerned about the offensive tackles, you know? So Landon Jackson, and I think Trajan Jeffcoat has a chance to be a real stud there for him. So Cam Ball, can he be a real disruptor for him? Possibly. Torian Carter after missing some time. You know, Eric Gregory's been a guy that's been consistently in the starting lineup for years now. But I kind of think Landon Jackson, and if I'm picking a guy on the interior, I think I might pick Cam Ball. You got Anthony Booker and Kevy Rose coming in too. Maybe guys that could do that too. But, yeah, I still think they're solid 3 deep on the defensive line, and I think that's maybe the best they've ever been. They have 9 seniors on the defensive line. When has that happened? Is this the best recruiting staff Arkansas has had in a while? Maybe so. With the addition of Marcus Woodson, Darren Wilson, especially Marcus Woodson. I mean, Darren Wilson's been great too, but Marcus Woodson has done some work, and Travis Williams too. And really, the footprint for Arkansas has changed a lot. We talked about that on the last show with Danny. Just recruiting more in the Southeast region for the Southeast Conference, Mississippi, Alabama. You know, you're just seeing more of that. Georgia, of course, we've seen that for a while with Jimmy Smith. But, I mean, Jimmy Smith's a hell of a recruiter. Woodson. I mean, there's a lot of guys. I mean, I could just go on, but, I mean, there's a lot. Scott Fountain's a very underrated recruiter as well. It may be. I mean, here's the deal, guys. Like, we can talk about how bad a coach Chad Morris was, and he was. I mean, maybe the worst coach in SEC history. I mean, if you look at the record, yeah, he was. But that 2019 recruiting class was solid. You want to look at it real quick? We can talk, and I'm not saying it's all Chad Morris, but there's some coaches on that staff like Jeff Traylor, who's doing some really good work at UTSA. But there were some good coaches on it. I mean, Barry Lunny was on that staff. He did a great job. Look at Arkansas's tight end commits. Look at the 2019 class at Arkansas. Traylon Burks. Hudson Henry was Hudson didn't have a great career at Arkansas, but he was very highly regarded. Trey Knox, Devin Bush, another guy who didn't have a great career, but he was very highly regarded. Jalen Catalon, Colin Clay, who I thought he could have had a really good year at Arkansas. Matayo Soli, really heavily regarded, didn't have a great career at Arkansas. KJ Jefferson, Greg Brooks Jr. started as a true freshman for Arkansas, 3-year starter before he transferred. TQ Jackson didn't pan out. Shamar Nash didn't pan out, but 4-star recruits. Zach Williams was a 4-star recruit still with the team. Eric Gregory started multiple years for Arkansas. Ricky Stromberg went on to the NFL. Enoch Jackson, Zach Zymas. Neither of those guys really panned out and transferred. Torian Carter's had a good career here. Bo Limmer's had a good career. Monte Spivey didn't really pan out. Chiboise Nwana didn't really pan out. Malik Chavis has been here. He's had an okay career here, mostly as a backup, but has started some games. Myron Cunningham, a 2-year starter for Arkansas out of junior college. Brady Latham, possibly the most underrated recruit in the class. Brady Latham was, let me tell you where Brady Latham was. He was in the thousands, I bet. Brady Latham was the number 1,049 recruit in the country. I think he outlived that. And then you had Marcus Miller and Dylan Rathke. Miller's been hurt a lot throughout his career. And these are the lowest rated recruits in the class, Dylan Rathke, who ended up transferring. But, man, that's a pretty darn good class when you consider impact guys. And that was really the only – the 2018 class was, kind of pieced together, kind of similar to the way Pittman did 2020, get a short window to recruit. And then the 2019 class, and then 2020 is, Pittman. So they really just had this one full class, and look at that. I remember Barry Lunny said, we have recruiting meetings, every day. I've never been a part of a staff that recruits, has had this many meetings. So give some credit where credit is due. A lot of the success Arkansas has been able to have with Pittman is, with a lot of these guys. Now, having said that, it's a pretty darn good recruiting staff. The 2022 class is, I think, tied for second highest rated class all time at Arkansas. The 2019 class is obviously, we've seen the fruits of the labor with those guys contributing. So, all right, any more questions? Do I think Huff is a Missoulian? I don't think so. Donna Williams says, are we done recruiting in Louisiana? No, there's just kind of ebbs and flows back and forth. Switched over to these plastic tees. I used to always be wood tees, but I never lose these. They don't fly very far, and they don't break, and they're bright. I've been playing with, I always fiddle with something. Dustin Hoofman says, after seeing how Marcus Woodson changed FSU football, I'm excited to see what he'll do with the Arkansas defense. Well, they're not going to be 131 like they were last year. Here's another crazy stat. Arkansas led the country in explosive plays. They gave up 90 plays last year of 20 yards or more. They were 131 nationally. 90 plays of 20 yards or more last year. That's insane. That's unacceptable. It's ridiculous. That's another Chad Morrisism. It's unacceptable. We asked him, why did this happen? It's unacceptable. But it is. 131 nationally in yards given up passing and in explosive plays over 20 yards. Tyler Killingsworth says, KJ and Rocket will shine. Natty time. Calling it. All right, everybody. Appreciate you joining me. Again, if you haven't left us a review on Apple Podcasts, we'd love to have a review. Not just a rating's great. We've got 905 ratings right now. We're a 4.9. We got some people who like to throw 1 star, some haters. but most of you like the show, and we appreciate that 5-star review. And but leave something nice, leave something for people to say. If it's crazy, funny, or something like that, I'll read it on the air. So for Danny West, appreciate you joining us, giving us that insight into recruiting. Thank you to all of you watchers and listeners, and of course our subscribers at HawgSports.com. We got some great specials coming up for you as we approach August as well that you want to look out for, some really big deals. So, all right, everybody, that's the show. That's it. Happy 4th of July coming up, and we'll talk to you guys next week. This has been Trey Biddy with HawgSports.com, and we'll catch you next time.